Hello there YouTube, it's your boy B.P.R.D back with another kicking graphic novel review. Today we are looking at the B.P.R.D. Omnibus, Volume 3. Yeah, I have been reading through a lot of the MIGNOLAVERSE and HELLBOY stuff from Dark Horse Comics. So let me read you the back of the book. In 2001, HELLBOY quit the B.P.R.D., leaving its roster of special agents to defend the world from any occult threats and the growing menace of the Frog Army. Now the adventurers are collected into one continuous saga following the exploits of Abe Sapien, Liz Sherman, Roger the Homunculus, Johann Kraus, Kate Corrigan, Ashley Strode, and many more, from the war on the frogs through the end of Ragnarok. Join HELLBOY creator Mike Mignola and a slew of talented writers and artists as they bring you the main collection of B.P.R.D. stories in a series of 10 volumes. Yeah, so we have a long way to go, including other omnibuses of other MIGNOLAVERSE books. But this contains the Universal Machine, Garden of Souls, Killing Ground, and then, of course, the sketchbook in the back. So, the Universal Machine. First off, they bombed the shit out of that Eldritch corpse from the end of the last volume. And Johann is doing a lot of studying to try to figure out how to revive Roger. His soul is still in his body and stuff, but he's a homunculus, and his body's been blown apart. There's not much left. It's basically a glorified torso. For all intents and purposes, Roger's dead. But a lot of people aren't willing to accept it because he's a homunculus. And a historian thinks that he's found a way to restore him. There are these ancient books that talk about ways to create homunculus flesh. And, you know, they all go to kind of trade for one of these books. And there's this back and forth where this collector guy in this little European village is kind of almost matching wits with the B.P.R.D. He says his name is Theory? Something like that. Anyway, Dr. Corrigan, who we've seen in many of these, meets with him, and this guy sends the historian out to a phone booth, and you know, like, that's a trap. That's such a big trap. So no one will talk to him. He gets in the phone booth, and then the shop kind of disappears. Yeah, you know how it is with these creepy supernatural shops. So now Dr. Corrigan has been spirited away, essentially. And we have Abe Sapien all locked up by himself, isolated, moping about his lost life, even though he doesn't remember any of it. And he's a completely different person now. But they talk about the origin of their current captain, and how there was like this nun that was a monster, and there were these jaguar worshipping cultists and stuff, and how he was killed by them and all his men were killed by them, but he came back to life and none of the others really did. But Dr. Corrigan has been transported to like this castle, and it's kind of time travel-y in a way, and there are these kind of deformed lords and ladies eating birds, just like roadkill birds. And you see this kind of little homunculus guy called Lagurk, and he's kind of the servant of this fiendish collector. And the collector does not treat him well, and eventually it'll come back to bite him. So he's trying to make a deal with Dr. Corrigan to get the book. He's like, yeah, I'll trade you, who I've kidnapped, back to the B.P.R.D. for Roger's corpse. Or I can give you the book and send you back to the B.P.R.D. for Abe Sapien or Roger's corpse. And she's like, but without Roger's corpse, I have no point in keeping the book. So he's like, okay, then give me Abe Sapien and you can bring Roger back. But he really, really wants Roger the most because he has this homunculus cabinet, and Roger's the only known homunculus specimen missing from it. He talks about Roger's origins and blah, 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 and how he's going to feed Kate Corrigan to these monsters if they don't listen to her. But we also get this story about Johann falling in love with the ghost of a dead woman that he was communing with, and her really rejecting him, and he kind of caused both her and her husband a lot of mental stress with his obsession. Not great. But Dr. Corrigan is actually able to trick him. Yeah, she's able to trick this fiendish little collector. But before we get to that, there's also a lot of werewolves outside the phone booth that the historian is trapped in. We also see these dreams Liz had where she felt guilty about accidentally incinerating her family, and she thinks the dreams are actually the ghosts telling her that they forgave her, and etc. Pretty interesting. Abe, of course, doesn't really super want to talk about his ghost story and his origins, so he tells a story with Hellboy in it, which is great, about him and Hellboy tracking down a Wendigo. And there's actually a page in this. It's page 107 in this omnibus, but it's a very famous page from the MIGNOLAVERSE, where Hellboy is about to shoot this Wendigo, and the Wendigo says his name is Daryl, and he puts his gun down and says, "Hi, Daryl." Turns out the Wendigo hops from person to person. It's often associated with cannibalism, but the Wendigo will kill somebody, and then the person that was the host for the Wendigo, their soul is freed, but the person they've killed has now been condemned and becomes the Wendigo. And they can't move on to the afterlife until they've killed somebody and infected them with the Wendigo. But they take Daryl into custody, and he still has his human mind, so he goes peacefully, but he's slowly losing his human mind. And eventually, Daryl's going to forget who he is. He'll be nothing but rage. But they can't just let him kill someone, so they have to make the hard decision to basically keep Daryl's soul on the mortal plane. Because what are they supposed to do? Let the Wendigo kill somebody? No. Come on. You can't do that. Anyhow, Dr. Corrigan is able to slice the fingers off of this collector, and it's because she specifically wanted a ring on one of the fingers, which she gives to the little servant, who turns out to be a big deal devil. And this devil raises up another big deal devil, and they destroy the collection to torture the collector. But the book that Dr. Corrigan needs to revive Roger is part of the collection. So it's destroyed. She survives, but they don't get the book, which means they can't bring Roger back. But Johann is able to commune with Roger, and it switches to Mignola art for this sequence, which is great. And Roger's like, yeah, like, I'm at peace here in my own body. It's like my own personal little heaven. It's great. I miss all of you, but I'm at peace, and I can just be. And Johann shakes his hand and is able to accept it, leaves his body, and Roger is officially dead. BCA 1500 to D 2006. And it's actually kind of sad because Roger was one of my favorites, but what you gonna do? And I do have to say, that whole story, I didn't actually know if Roger was going to come back or not. It was written very well, where it could go either way. And it did go the way of him not coming back. The corporate comics would have brought him back as soon as possible. But, Hellboy is an indie comic owned by its creator, Mike Mignola. And so are, the comics in that universe. And the cool thing is, indie comics and stuff are much more willing to kill off characters permanently. And, do more interesting things and subvert expectations and whatnot. But we get a story about the unwrapping of this mummy, and the mummy comes back to life. Hey, that's pretty cool. But Abe is still kind of obsessing about his previous life, and we see, their captain kind of going through these processes, and we're not super sure why, but there are these evil little monkey creatures that were in his origin story in the last thing, and he found one of them in a jar in the sub-basement before. And he seems to be hallucinating a lot. Something's really happening to him. But we're not going to see what it is quite yet. But we see this island with all these weird deformed creatures and these... They look like Big Daddies from BioShock. These kind of guys in these weird diver suits. And they seem to be doing experiments there and whatnot. But, Abe, he really wants to know about his past. So he goes to this doc. There's someone there that says they can help him. And there's this little girl. She's mentally disabled, which makes her easy to possess, it seems. Anyhow. There's a lot of... Oh, also, there's a lot of stuff that connects to the Lobster Johnson comic, and I have read the Volume 1 Omnibus of that, if anyone's interested. But Liz is kind of seeing that guy who's haunting her and kind of helped her during the frogs thing, and he's like, no, the frogs aren't over, Liz, it's not over. But he kind of makes Liz doubt herself a lot of ways. It kind of implies that she can't trust anyone other than him, but she doesn't trust him, but he also makes her think she can't trust anyone else. So he really ends up isolating her. But we see this guy who kind of has this superhuman body hanging out with these Big Daddy looking characters. And, as it turns out, these are all the people that were in the pictures with Abe. These are the people that kind of did the weird ritual seance that turned Abe Sapien into Abe Sapien. They're all still alive. One of them has transplanted his mind into a new superhuman body, and he's making superhuman bodies for the others, but they have this poor mummy captive. She hasn't done anything wrong. She actually was kind of a celebrity in society after she woke up and adapted to the English way of living, but she's kind of been isolated since then, and it's her mind that's going into this poor disabled girl. She hasn't hurt the girl. The girl ends up being fine and going back to her family and everything by the end, don't worry. But these guys have planted bombs like all over the world, and basically they want to drown the world. Yeah, there's a lot of wanting to drown the world, but Abe is able to find them, and they accept him. They think he still has his memories. They realize he don't have them memories. They knock him out. They try to explain stuff to him. They're like, hey, we're going to drown the world. Isn't that great? And he's like, no, that's not great, actually. They think he is like the vessel for this big god. And they want him and the mummy's power. And, she tells him about how after she woke up, she was kind of welcomed, and she learned a lot about science and supernatural stuff as well, and she has these cool mind powers, and she's a very interesting, like, old, wise character. I actually really, really like her. But these guys are going to take their superhuman bodies, and once they drown all these people, they're going to absorb their souls into themselves. And they'll be like these big soul batteries. And it's actually kind of interesting what they want to do. They say when the end comes for all the world, these souls, unlike billions of others, will live on forever under our stewardship. Each one of us a living nation of a man. Spiritual reservoirs. That is, of course, from page 238 of this omnibus. But Abe, doesn't want to let him do it. He kind of does his best to destroy these superhuman bodies and foil their plans, and they're like, oh, we gotta kill Abe, and they try to kind of use their trained monsters to fight Abe, but it doesn't work out. Abe Sapien does, of course, end up overtaking them. He isn't able to kill all of them, but he is able to do enough damage to stop their horrible, horrible world-ending plans. And I just gotta say, I love the character designs in this story. They're really, truly great. But this really helps Abe Sapien kind of move beyond his funk. And they take all the weird creatures on the island, because without these evil guys giving them direction, they're actually very placid little mutants. Yeah. Then we move into Killing Ground, where... Sorry, that was my cat knocking a Hulk action figure over. We move into Killing Ground, where a lot of stuff from their field leader's life, the resurrected field leader, kind of comes back to haunt him. They're accusing him of stuff. They know he's hiding something, they just don't know what. He has, like, family history with, like, the Japanese during World War II, and he's like, yeah, but I'm not a fascist. I mean, Johan's grandparents were, like, Nazis, and nobody's saying shit to him. And I'm like, that's a really good point. Like, it's clear he's hiding something, but he hasn't done anything, like, to betray anyone quite yet. But then someone seems to let the Wendigo out. Yeah, Daryl. And Johan actually takes the superhuman body that did survive, and he is reveling in it. He's super strong. He has a huge appetite, but he can finally bone again. He wants to bone hard. And bone hard he does. Liz is having horrible dreams about the frogs taking over, but the mummy is now living in the B.P.R.D. and kind of becomes besties with Liz. It's actually quite nice. It's very wholesome, and I really like to see it. But in addition to the Wendigo escaping, there seems to be something else. A man who has infiltrated the B.P.R.D., seemingly with the intent of killing the captain. And he kind of does it. He blows him up. But then the captain comes out of the flames. And uh-oh. He's a giant jaguar monster. The jaguar cult infected him and turned him into this big kind of were-jaguar killing machine. And that is what these supernatural people have been coming to suppress within him, so that he doesn't become a monster. And it turns out the other people in his platoon or whatever were all also resurrected, but they were all just told that each other were dead, and they turned into monsters, unfortunately. But the Wendigo escapes, and unfortunately, so does the captain. He bounces up on out of there in his super cool jaguar monster form. It's actually a really, really dope, and it's a continually evolving form in a way. It's kind of changes its looks as it goes onward a little more. It fights Johann in his new superhuman body. But unfortunately, Johann's throat gets ripped out. But when his throat is ripped out, it's not Johann that comes out of the body. It's the ghost of the lobster. Lobster freaking Johnson, who shoots Liz Sherman with his ghost gun to hurt the entity that's been manipulating her. Yeah, when that happened, I was like, what? But Johann is back in his containment suit, and he's real torn up about it. Like, this is really well written. You can really feel the turmoil in him. How he had gotten used to kind of the suit. He's had drawbacks and stuff, but then he had a body, and almost immediately it was ripped away from him. He lost it. Kinda sucks. It really kinda sucks. But unfortunately, the Wendigo and the Were-Tiger are at large, and they seem, or Were-Jaguar, and they seem to meet each other in the wilderness. But that's really all we get. It kind of just ends there. And you're like, ooh, what's going to happen with that? And then, of course, we have a big sketchbook. I love these sketchbooks. It's just great art. And I love all the little blurbs that explain the thought process of all of the artists that worked on this. It's really quite wonderful. I love the sketchbooks. And there's a lot to them, too. They're not little. It's like a chunk of the book. It's really quite interesting. So, that is it for the B.P.R.D. Omnibus Volume 3. Thank you all very much for your support. Please remember to rate, comment, and subscribe. Check out all the cool links in the description below, Facebook, Twitter, etc. I don't know what I'm going to do next time. I might go ahead and do Volume 4. But there's also a lot of Red Hulk stuff I want to do. Still got to finish Nick Spencer's Spider-Man. I still got to finish Yu-Gi-Oh! Duelist. Batman Eternal. Chip Zdarsky Daredevil stuff. Moon Knight. There's so much I still have to do. But I'm sure we'll get to it. That's it. Thank you all once again. I'll see you all next time. Bye for now.